While the countries on the African continent do not receive much prestige in the international political arena, the Republic of South Africa, located at the very tip of the continent, has always stood out from the others. In 1994, by ending racial segregation, Nelson Mandela, the leader of the movement, gained widespread sympathy from supporters and opponents. This sympathy also led to South Africa being viewed in a different light. However, despite such a promising development, they still haven't been able to escape their dark history. They are deeply struggling with many problems. In this video of Kablosu's Dergi, we will take a closer look at South Africa and see what kind of country it is. As the name suggests, South Africa is located at the southernmost part of the African continent. 80% of its population is black, 9% is mixed race, 7% is white, 2% is ethnic natives, and the rest consists of small communities. There are 11 official languages. Among them, English is the most widely spoken language in the country. The Afrikaans language, which is generally spoken by white people of European origin and is based on the West Germanic language, is considered one of the youngest languages in the world. There are 3 capitals. The executive capital is Pretoria, and the legislative capital, which is where the government is located, is Cape Town. The judicial capital is the city of Bloemfontein, which is almost in the very center of the country. Underground resources are the country's biggest source of livelihood. They have the 3rd largest gold reserves in the world, which is one of the most valuable metals. It is the place where the Bears Company, which introduced modern diamond trading and marketing to the world, extracts the most diamonds. They have reserves of coal, iron ore, nickel, titanium, platinum, and many more. Although the African continent is known as a dry and infertile place, South Africa is an important agricultural country. They are the world's 2nd largest citrus exporter. They earn about $2 billion a year just from selling citrus fruits. Corn, wheat, and sugarcane are also other important agricultural products. The modern history of South Africa, which was previously inhabited by the local people, began with the Dutch East India Company. The Dutch established a supply station in the region, where ships using the Cape of Good Hope could stop for their crew. This supply station, established in 1652, is the first European settlement. Over time, the increase in trade traffic on the oceans led to the expansion of the Dutch settlement in South Africa. After a series of wars with the local people in the region, the Europeans expanded their area of control. During the period of the slave trade, the Dutch also brought many slaves to the region from Indonesia, Madagascar, and India. The Dutch East India Company came close to bankruptcy towards the end of the 1700s and went bankrupt in 1799. During this time, the British, gaining dominance at sea, started occupying regions near the Cape of Good Hope. Afterwards, the British became the rulers of this region. In 1833, the British government approved the law declaring the abolition of slavery in all the colonies under its control. The abolition of slavery in South Africa did not align with British interests. In order not to be affected by this decision and to continue slavery, they started a migration called the Great Trek. With this migration, they and their slaves settled in regions outside of British control. Despite the abolition of slavery, the separation between whites and blacks in the country continued until very recently. From 1948 to 1994, South Africa was governed by a regime called apartheid, which promoted racial segregation, declared the superiority of whites, and protected these policies by law. The word apartheid also means separation in the Afrikaans language. With the discovery of diamonds in 1867 and gold in 1886 in the region, there was a large wave of migration from the European continent. Even before that, practices like slavery made white people be considered superior. After the surge of European migration, discrimination and exploitation worsened. During World War II, disagreements arose between political parties in South Africa, which fought on the side of Great Britain. The South African National Party, which admired Adolf Hitler, the leader of Nazi Germany, the enemy of Great Britain, was the main reason for these disagreements. After the war, the National Party, which won the general elections in 1948, officially began to implement the apartheid regime in the country, which was already dominated by the white minority. In the 1960s, South Africa experienced significant economic development and became the first and only country on the African continent to achieve developed country status during this period. During this time, many foreign firms built new factories or partnered with existing ones in the country. Again, some foreign investors began to invest their assets in South Africa. However, none of these developments were beneficial for the whole country. The gains from economic development were used only for the welfare of whites within the framework of the apartheid regime. Issues such as education, occupational groups, and salary distribution between blacks and whites became even more pronounced. Anti-apartheid movements began immediately after the regime was declared. By the 1960s, these movements turned into acts of terrorism. Nelson Mandela was arrested in 1962 on charges of terrorism and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, after serving 27 years in prison, he was unconditionally released in 1990 by the then President de Klerk. The early 1990s was also a period when terrorist acts were being carried out. The growing terrorism started to weaken the legitimacy of the National Party, in power since 1948. Nelson Mandela became the head of the African National Congress, also known as the African National Congress. Mandela gathered strong public support around him. The National Party, facing a loss of legitimacy, officially recognized the previously illegal African National Congress due to Mandela's strong political influence. The bans imposed on many black people were lifted. Those who were imprisoned because of anti-apartheid movements were released. Afterwards, the articles of law that defined apartheid policies were gradually removed from the law. In 1994, the African National Congress Party won the first elections in which the entire society was able to vote freely. Nelson Mandela, the party leader, also became South Africa's first black president. Frederick Willem de Klerk, the last president of the National Party that approved the abolition of apartheid laws, received the Nobel Peace Prize together with Nelson Mandela in 1993. If you think that the end of the apartheid regime, that is, racial segregation, solved the problems in the country, you are mistaken. Despite all its natural resource wealth, South Africa is still one of the world's poorest countries, where income inequality is at its peak. For example, according to the World Bank's 2019 report, it was the country with the highest income inequality in the world. Unemployment has climbed to an alarming rate of 34%. Hunger, poverty, and epidemic diseases are rampant. It is one of the countries with the highest acquired immunodeficiency syndrome rates in the world. 1 out of every 5 people carries the human immunodeficiency virus. Crime rates are incredibly high. Residential complexes are always protected by private security guards. It's advised not to enter certain parts of the country. Some streets, kidnappings are very common. Today, the division between rich and poor has replaced the black and white segregation of the apartheid era. Houses, neighborhoods, food, and cars that used to be exclusive to whites are now exclusive to the rich. It's not possible for the poor to enter these neighborhoods, taste these foods, or ride in these cars. And as you might guess, the poor are almost always black citizens. After the apartheid regime, which black South Africans fought against for years, was abolished, the main reason for the lack of expected social progress is said to be the weak foundation of the revolution. It is said that the Mandela government and the governments that followed were not capable enough to institutionalize the revolutions they fought for and to implement them. Since 1994, corruption in South Africa has steadily increased, creating high walls between the ruling group and the people. Jacob Zuma, who won the 2009 elections, was pointed out as the person who would put an end to all of this. But during his 9 years in power, he was unable to solve these problems. After Jacob Zuma handed over power, he faced corruption charges. Due to the lawsuits, he was sentenced to prison on June 29, 2021. For the first time since the end of the apartheid regime, a South African president was sentenced to prison. What's even worse is that the path taken to eliminate racism and bring freedom and peace to everyone has taken a different direction in recent years. The South African government is discussing a new land reform, claiming that these lands belong to black people before the arrival of Europeans. About 70% of the private farmland in the country belongs to whites, who make up only 7% of the population. Black people are engaging in violent acts against white farmers in response to the situation. Dozens of white people lose their lives every year in these acts of violence. Since 1990, more than 1,000 white farmers have been killed. Land reform involves the decision to expropriate some of the land held by whites without compensation and distribute it to black citizens. The Cold War era was also a period when the development of nuclear weapons accelerated. Although the Soviet Union is now history, the development of nuclear weapons still continues. In history, 4 countries have given up their nuclear weapons programs. 3 of them were former Soviet countries: Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine. They said they didn't have enough budget for the maintenance and control of these weapons, so they handed them over. South Africa is the sole nation to have independently initiated and then willingly terminated its nuclear weapons program. After the Cold War ended, South African leaders said they no longer needed these weapons, and by 1994, they had dismantled the entire nuclear program. 1994 was also the year when the apartheid regime came to an end. Some experts claim that South Africa's white officials ended the nuclear program because they realized the regime was coming to an end. They argue that the reason was their fear that nuclear weapons would fall into the hands of black people. Table Mountain, located in the city of Cape Town, is one of the country's most popular landmarks. It is believed to be about 260 million years old and is considered one of the oldest mountains in the world. It is among the 7 natural wonders of the world. It is considered one of the 12 primary centers on Earth that radiate magnetic, electrical, and spiritual energy. For this reason, trekking on Table Mountain is one of the activities that tourists visiting Cape Town want to do the most in the city. South Africa also has some of the world's most remarkable examples of wildlife. The largest land mammal, the largest ostrich, the heaviest flying bird, the tallest animal, the largest reptile, and the fastest land mammal can all be found within the borders of this country. For this reason, it is also a top safari tourism destination. Kruger National Park is the place where safari tours are the most popular. Those who want to see great white sharks, which are among the most terrifying creatures in the world, in their natural habitat, also go to South Africa. Tourists who board the boats dive in cages off the coast of Cape Town and come face to face with great white sharks. The world's most luxurious train operates in South Africa. It operates on various routes from South Africa to Namibia and Tanzania. The train has 2 lounge cars, 2 restaurant cars, and rooms each with a private bathroom. African countries are generally known for their governments that come to power through coups. In fact, there was a time when coups happened so frequently on the continent that it was said whoever woke up early in the morning would stage a coup. South Africa, on the other hand, has never faced a coup despite its turbulent political history. They have been holding regular elections for almost 100 years, even though they have been controversial. Because theft is very common in the country, it is legally allowed for vehicle owners to install flamethrowers on their cars to protect themselves. They repel thieves with flamethrowers. Greta Marshall, who was Nelson Mandela's 3rd wife, is the only person in the world to have been the first lady of 2 different countries. Greta Marshall was married twice. The first was her marriage to Samora Machel between 1975 and 1986. Samora Machel was also serving as the president of Mozambique during this period. In 1998, she married Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was also the president of South Africa during their marriage. Mandela remained married to Greta Marshall until the end of his life. If you also know an interesting fact about South Africa, please write it in the comments.